NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski recently spoke out on what he's been hearing around the NBA in regards to trade negotiations with the Toronto Raptors, how Masai Ujiri has been approaching these discussions with other teams, and if whether or not they'll actually deal away Pascal Siakam. I'm also going to touch on a few numbers I've been digging into because I've been seeing a lot of people, especially after the acquisition of RJ Barrett specifically, say that there's no real place for Pascal Siakam on this roster, and personally, I just disagree immensely. So we have a lot of things to dive into in this video. Before we do, folks, over 55% of our viewers now are not subscribed to the channel. Again, if you want to stay up to date with everything regarding this Toronto Raptors team, it'd mean the world to me if you guys could hit that sub button. But let's dive into what Adrian Wojnarowski has had to say, because again, we've heard reports about Masai Ujiri's plan, timelines, potential teams, and things like that. And now we have some insight in terms of how other teams are approaching these discussions with the Toronto Raptors. Because again, Adrian Wojnarowski doesn't have that close of an ear to the Raptors front office. That's something that's kind of been well known. You know, Shams usually gets the leaks first about these deals and these trades and these draft picks and stuff. But Adrian Wojnarowski is one of the most locked in guys across the NBA. And he has a kind of feel in terms of what's going on, how the league is perceiving these potential moves that are coming for the Toronto Raptors. So Woj basically came out and said the Raptors are now building the team around Scottie Barnes that fits him in age-wise compared to Siakam, which anyone could have told you. We went younger. RJ Barrett, Emmanuel quickly fit that Scottie Barnes age timeline. Fred's gone this summer. OG around that 26 is, kind of not an old guy by any means, but fit that Siakam sort of timeline that didn't really work out in terms of deep playoff runs. He's out, and we got a couple younger guys in. But he goes on to say that Siakam's value around the league, he has value, but he holds leverage on a potential destination because of his expiring contract. Again, nothing crazy novel there. We've known what sort of Pascal Siakam's approach has been to this potential trade discussions, the Hawks stuff over the summer. He's not going to be willing to re-sign with the team right away, sign a 2-year extension, because he wants to go into unrestricted free agency or at least sign a long-term extension because he can get more money and more security on those potential deals. So completely makes sense for Pascal Siakam there. But this is where the interesting stuff, as interested teams want to know if Siakam would re-sign with them, which will impact how how much the Raptors will receive in a trade. So again, we know Siakam's not going to re-sign, but if he can give that sort of verbal commitment to other teams, that's what they want. Or maybe not even a verbal commitment, but his interest in potentially re-signing with that team. If he's going to be completely tight-lipped and mouth shut about any team he potentially goes to, then the Raptors just aren't going to get a lot of value. And that's a part of the reason the Raptors could get a haul for OG Anunoby, because he's a CAA client. News immediately came out that he'd be willing to take a lesser sort of, a little bit of a pay cut to be with the New York Knicks. So the Knicks knew that they were going to keep him long term. So it was worth giving up guys like Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett in order to make a deal happen, in order to facilitate that sort of trade. So even if it's not, again, pen to paper, contract signed, but a little bit more of a verbal, hey, I'd actually be interested in playing for the Dallas Mavericks or something like that from Pascal Siakam. The team could get some assets, but, personally, again, I'm not that high on a lot of the packages that have been thrown out there, so unless things get messy, I don't think we're getting a lot of those guarantees from Pascal. But really the interesting part from this is Toronto is now using this window of time to see what Siakam looks like around Scottie Barnes, Emmanuel Quickly, and RJ Barrett. So, that window has been the term that has been thrown around a lot of tweets and a lot of, Instagram posts and things along those lines over the past, since this quote came out. So Pascal Siakam is being analyzed in terms of how he'll fit these players. Now, I've been screaming from a mountaintop that Pascal Siakam fits pretty well any team perfect except what we had going on earlier in the season. Because, one, he's a guy that creates his own shot. He's a guy that takes on a brunt of the defensive load and is still being able to score pretty efficiently. His three-point shot wasn't that great at the start of this year, but has slowly increased as the season's gone along. We're going to dive deep into his shooting right now in this video, because I have a lot of things I want to say about him potentially fitting around the Scottie Barnes group and things along those lines. But Pascal Siakam is just a guy that won a championship amongst an ensemble of extremely great basketball players: Kawhi, Marc Gasol, Kyle Lowry, Danny Green, Fred VanVleet coming off the bench for that squad. That Serge Ibaka, that team had a squad, and Pascal Siakam played his role perfectly as a number 2 option. There's no reason he couldn't do it with a different ensemble of capable basketball players. And the past couple seasons, the Raptors just haven't really had a lot of guards that can create and facilitate and stuff. The expectations, the brunt was on Pascal Siakam to completely run this offense. And while he can do it, it's not going to lead to a lot of wins. And now with the acquisitions of Manu Quickly and RJ Barrett, 2 guys that can create for themselves. Again, OG Anunoby's amazing, but he's not a guy that's going to create you a bunch of offense. So spot up and, catch those threes and things along those lines. But he's not going to be a guy that's creating shots for Pascal Siakam. So what does this leave the Toronto Raptors? Because again, people are saying, with Jakob Poeltl and RJ Barrett right now, the shooting of Siakam, it's not great. There's not a lot of spacing. Well, I tend to disagree, because if we look at Siakam right now, already his 3-point shot has been increasing. It's not great, 29%, but a couple weeks ago, that was down to like 21% from behind the 3-point line. So that number is steadily increasing, 22 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Those stats are what they are, right? Pascal still also only 30 years old. It's not like he's an old, washed vet that, has a couple years left, is in completely win now sort of territory. If he gives Siakam that 4 or 5 year max, he's going to be a great player, probably till the last year on that deal, especially with the Toronto Raptors medical staff and all that type of stuff. And Siakam's ability to create shots, craftiness in that block, or, the semi-post area he likes to operate. But the real interesting parts, because frankly, a lot of people are criticizing, again, the lack of shooting on this team, which is a thing, but Siakam's been a guy that has been a solid shooter, particularly during those Kawhi years and the season after. He was a guy that could space the floor. And why is that? Why is that for Pascal Siakam? Well, if you look at sort of his shooting splits, right? Again, we can point back to that 2018-2019 season, and then his field goal, his 3-point percentage, 37%. That is remarkably high. And then the season after, again, with the competent Toronto Raptors team at 36%. Those numbers for a power forward are good. They're above league average. That is a good 3-point shooting percentage, a guy that can space the floor. So what's the difference, in terms of what's going on along those lines? Well, you look at the assisted 3-point percentage, and Pascal Siakam is a guy that gets assisted on a lot of his threes, particularly in his high shooting seasons. The season after, he was really cooking before the bubble ended up going down and stuff. But Siakam's a guy that sort of is really solid in terms of knocking down his 3-point shots when they are being assisted on. When he's sort of on that sort of 3-point line, wherever he is around the basket, people kick it out to him and he can get those set shots. The thing about Pascal, especially following Kyle Lowry's departure, is a lot of the 3-point shots he was taking were just dribble pulls, him trying to create weird sort of step shots, at the end of clock sort of threes that he was being forced to take. Pascal Siakam is a guy that, again, has improved in that area, and particularly the season after the NBA championship. Before the bubble, he was hitting those shots at a pretty high clip. It was pretty ridiculous. The bubble knocked that sort of skill, or that efficiency at least, completely out of his game. But, Siakam is a guy that set shot mechanics, he can let it fly from behind the 3-point arc. And now with Quickly, who, again, his passing vision, he gets around guys, he gets paint touches, seems to be more of a willing passer from the 2 games we saw from talking to Knicks, sort of people that watch all the games 24/7. He's a guy that's sort of willing to space that pass. He's an actual guard, right? And then RJ Barrett, again, is creators. These guys can create their own shots. OG Anunoby, there's no hope for getting that ball kicked out to you in a timely fashion when he's making those drives. Whereas RJ Barrett, even though he can make some bad decisions, Emmanuel Quickly, again, a proper point guard, 2 of those guys are capable of driving and then at least making those kickouts for Pascal Siakam to get some shots. So, those types of looks are going to be more open for Pascal Siakam here now at this point. And then even this season, right? Even this season right now, look at that stat on the far right corner. Pascal Siakam is shooting 45% from corner threes, 45.2%. Those are the types of looks, right? So it's not like, because sometimes players' mechanics and stuff can change, their confidence adjusts, and so it's tough to look back to 2018, 2019, 2020 in terms of hope for Pascal Siakam's 3-point shot to improve, with a new sort of look team. But even this season, when he's gotten those corner threes, those corner looks, he's hitting them at a ridiculously high clip. So those corner threes only really happen from those kickouts, from those pass outs, in the corner, those open shots. Pascal Siakam can knock those down. The floor spacing is going to be there. And that's why, immediately after this trade just happened, again, extremely small sample size, we're seeing Pascal Siakam's stats, shooting the basketball, just overall look remarkable. I mean, he's averaging, again, small sample size. Don't read into this too much. 30 points, 6 rebounds, and shooting 60% from behind the three-point line on 5 attempts per game. Again, we're not reading into this too much, saying that he's going to be shooting 60% from 3 for the rest of the season, but he's getting cleaner looks. You see it on the eye test, and again, he hasn't been getting assists in these games. His assists down 1 a game. I think he had 0 assists last night, 2 in the game prior. So, he's asked to be less of a facilitator and more of a guy that gets his buckets in the flow of the offense. And yes, he's improved as a passer. We like that when he's getting double, he's capable of sort of making those passes happen, but his efficiency is up. He is more of a scoring player. Siakam's not LeBron James. Even though he's improved as a passer, he's not going to be a guy you want to sort of command and throw those cross-court. He doesn't have that really in his bag, even though he's improved in that area. What Pascal Siakam can do is get you some buckets, use his footwork, hit those spot-up threes, and then having Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett step up their shot creation and then be willing enough passers to where Pascal Siakam's still getting a lot of touches. He can complement all these guys kind of perfectly. So I'm of the belief, give Siakam his contract, let him sort of blossom around this sort of new-looked Raptors group. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work out. The Raptors don't have their draft pick anyways this season. I mean, trade him in the future. There's no reason why that shouldn't be the case. They have time to evaluate it. And again, this 2-game sample size could be leading us astray and things like that. But I think, as Woj said, right, the Toronto Raptors are using this window to view how Siakam can play with these dudes. And I think it's going to work out great. It has been working out great for the start of this. And we played some, definitely a really solid team in the Memphis Grizzlies. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section down below. You guys are best to make it as far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. I'm signing out. Cheers.